Hey everyone, today we are going to talk about how to solve quadratic equations. Before we do that, I want to refresh your memory on how we factored polynomials last week. So remember, we could factor out a greatest common factor. We could use magic X. And if we had to, we could move on to use slip and slide. And then we could also, if we had difference of squares, we could just use the square root strategy. So now we're going to move over and use this to solve quadratic equations. And quadratic equations are specifically in the form ax squared plus bx plus c. You're used to that because we've been using that for our magic x. And this right here, the x squared, is the marker of a quadratic equation. So let me add this before we get started. The solutions of a quadratic equation are also called the zeros. That's important to understand because looking at our first example, every time that we want to solve a quadratic equation, we have to set the equation equal to 0. So what we do is we set it equal to 0. We use one of our factoring strategies and then set each of those factors equal to 0 and solve. So let me show you what I mean. For number 1, we have x squared minus 4x minus 5 put equals 0. When I look at that, it looks like magic X has your back is going to be the best strategy to use. So my b is -4, a times c is -5. And I can already see that 1 and 5 are going to be good factors to use, and I want to make the 5 negative. So I have x plus 1 times x minus 5 are my factors. Remember, we want to set them equal to 0. Now I'm going to set each of my factors to 0 and solve for x. So for the first one, I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides. I get x equals 0 minus 1 is -1. So that's my first solution, or my first 0. Those two words are interchangeable. Now let's find the second 0. We have x, or we want to add 5 to both sides. 0 plus 5 is 5. So my two solutions, or my two zeros, are -1 and 5. Sometimes you'll also see them written like this, like a set of numbers. Both of those mean the same exact thing. So let's do a few more. So the next one we're going to solve is 8m squared plus 18m plus 9. So the first thing we want to do is set our equation equal to 0. Next, we're going to factor that left side. So looking at this, I don't see anything that can factor out any greatest common factor, so I'm going to use magic X has your back, and I'm going to have to do slip and slide. So b is 18, a times c, 8 times 9 is 72. So let's look at our factors of 72. We have 1 times 72, of course, 2 times 36, let's see, will 3 go in there? 3 times 24, and I think, nope, not quite yet, will 4 go in there? If I go 4, yep, 4 times, see, 4 goes into 7, 1 time, I'm left with 2, 8 times 4, 5 will not go in there. Oh, but I have 8 times 9 is 72. Will 6 go in there? Yes, it will. 6 times 12. And I think that's going to work for us. So 6 and 12 are going to be the factors we're going to use. They can both stay positive. So I have x plus 6 times x plus 12 equals 0. I've got to do slip and slide because I have that 8 for a. Divide both of these by 8. And I do notice that those fractions need to be reduced. So I'm going to reduce those. These can reduce by 2. So I get x plus 6 divided by 2 is 3, 8 divided by 2 is 4, slide that over to get 4x plus 3 times 4 will go into both of these, so I get x plus 12 divided by 4 is 3, 8 divided by 4 is 2, slide that over, times 2x plus 3 equals 0. And now my last step is to set each of these equal to 0. So I have 4x plus 3 equals 0, and 2x plus 3 equals 0. So here I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides. I get 4x equals negative 3. Divide both sides by 4. So my first 0, or my first solution, is negative 3/4. Let's do the same thing here. I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides. So 2x equals negative 3. Divide both sides by 2. So my second 0, or my second solution, is negative 3 over 2. So just remember, you can also write it like this, as a set of numbers. Now remember, that's a brace, that's not a parenthesis. So be careful with that. Excuse me, let's do another one. So here, take a look at this. 6n squared minus 18n minus 18 equals 6. And we want to solve or find these zeros. I don't know if you noticed or not, but this is already set up equal to 6. But because we want it equal to 0, I'm going to have to subtract the 6 from both sides. So I'm left with 6n squared minus 18n. Negative 18 minus 6 is going to give you negative 24 equals 0. Now I'm going to factor this. The first thing I notice is all of these numbers are divisible by 6. So I'm left with n squared minus 3n minus 4 equals 0. Now I'm going to do my magic X has your back. My b is negative 3. 1 times negative 4 is negative 4. And 4 and 1 will work. I'm going to make the 4 negative. 1 minus 4 is negative 3. 1 times negative 4 is negative 4. So I have 6 times n minus 1 times n minus 4 equals 0. And remember, we want to set each of our factors equal to 0. 6 equals 0, n minus 1 equals 0, and n minus 4 equals 0. So let's look at the first one. Can 6 ever equal 0? No. So that is not going to be a solution. It doesn't work, doesn't make sense. Let's look at our next one. Next, we want to add 1 to both sides. So we get n equals 1. That's our first solution, or our first 0. And now we want to add 4 to both sides of this one. 0 plus 4 is 4. So here's our second solution. Remember, our solution set can look like this as well. This is correct, this is correct. I just want you to see both notations. We're going to do 3 more examples, so you'll be prepared for your practice. So the next one, we have 3x squared minus 12 equals 16x. Remember, we want to set our quadratic equal to 0, but I have this 16x over here. So the opposite of plus or positive 16x is to subtract 16x from both sides. Now, when I write this, I want to write it in our standard form, which is ax squared plus bx plus c. So we're going to write it like this: 3x squared minus 16x minus 12. Now let's factor to solve our equation. I can't factor out a GCF, so it looks like Magic X has your back with slip and slide will help here. So I have negative 16. 3 times negative 12 is negative 36. So let's look at our factors. 1 times 36, 2 times 18, and I actually can stop right there. If I make the 18 negative, that gives me what I need. So my 2 factors are going to be x plus 2 times x minus 18 equals 0, And let's slip and slide with the 3. Divide everything by 3. So we'll slide this over to get 3x plus 2 times x minus 6, because 18 divided by 3 is evenly 6, equals 0. And remember, our last step to get our solution or our zeros is to set each of our factors equal to 0. X minus 6, and I think that's called the zero product property. I'll have to go back and check on that. All right, so on the first one, we're going to subtract 2 from both sides. You get 3x equals negative 2. Divide both sides by 3. So our first 0 is negative 2/3. Over here, we want to add 6 to both sides. So we get x equals 6. So our solution is negative 2/3, comma 6. Those are our zeros or our solution. Now I want to show you a couple of different situations. We've used magic X and slip and slide, even greatest common factor. Take a look at this one, 49x squared minus 16. We still want to set it up equal to 0. Excuse me. Now, to factor this, we would use square root, right? Well, let me show you how that's going to work when we solve. Set it up equal to 0. The first thing I want to do is add 16 to both sides. So I'm going to get 49x squared equals 16. Now I'm going to divide both sides by 49. I know I haven't taken the square root yet, but just watch, I will. So I have x squared equals 16 over 49. Watch this. I'm going to take the square root of both sides because the opposite of square is square root. So x equals, what is the square root of 16? 4. What's the square root of 49? 7. Do you remember when we factored by using square root, we had to have like an x plus 7, x minus 7? Well, when we do the square root to solve, we have to have a positive and a negative. So my solutions are positive 4/7 and negative 4/7. This is one of the ways you could write it. You could also just write it out like this. Oops, 4/7. So that's one way you can write it. Here's another. And guys, yet another. Plus or minus 4/7. All that means the same thing. I just want to show you. So that's how I would use square roots to solve a quadratic. And now let's do one final one. I have 7x squared plus 2x. Remember, to solve a quadratic, we set it up equal to 0. Now on this one, I notice I have a GCF I can factor out. I can factor out x, and I'm left with 7x plus 2. So when you have two factors like this, you don't have to do magic X or anything. You just say x equals 0 and 7x plus 2 equals 0. Now, this one already is a solution, but this one I have to solve for x. So I'll subtract 2 from both sides. I'm left with 7x equals negative 2. 0 minus 2 is negative 2. And divide both sides by 7. So my other 0 is negative 2/7.